The following is a DW Ancient Egypt production. In the last episode, we discussed Egypt's 26th dynasty. We ended with the Persian threat facing Ahmose II. His son and successor, Psammetichus III, came to the throne in 526 BC. Within a year, he had to face a Persian army at Pelusium, the eastern gateway into Egypt. The topics of this episode include the Battle of Pelusium, Persian Rule, the 28th and 29th Dynasties, Pharaohs Nectanebo I and Teos I, and the last native Egyptian pharaoh, Nectanebo II. The Battle of Pelusium. The Battle of Pelusium was the first major battle between the Persian Empire and Egypt. Herodotus writes a detailed account of these events. Although entertaining, he provides little fact and hardly any information about the actual battle. What is known is that the inexperienced king, Psammetichus III, was defeated by Cambyses II of Persia. Psammetichus III fled to Memphis but was captured, transported to Susa, the Persian capital, and executed. He would be the first Egyptian king to be captured and removed by a foreign power. From Egypt, Cambyses II attempted the conquest of Nubia, but his army was not able to cross the deserts and after heavy losses was forced to return. Cambyses II would become the first pharaoh of the 27th dynasty. Unlike the stories of Herodotus and the later Egyptian priests, Cambyses II respected and even participated in the Egyptian religious practices. He did not stay long in Egypt, however, and departed after leaving a satrap in control. Persian Rule. Darius I succeeded Cambyses II in 522 BC and took a closer interest in the internal affairs and administration of Egypt. During a visit in 497 BC, he had the satrap Ariandes executed for treason for attempting to issue his own coinage. Darius I built many temples and restored those that had previously been destroyed. Even though he was a Zoroastrian, he built temples dedicated to the gods of Egypt. He created several roads and completed Necho II's canal from the eastern delta at Pelusium to the Red Sea. The monuments that Darius built were often inscribed in the official languages of the Persian Empire. To construct these monuments, he employed a large number of workers and artisans of diverse nationalities. Several of these workers were deportees who had been employed specifically for these projects. At the time of Darius's death, construction projects were still underway. Xerxes completed these works and in some cases expanded his father's projects by completing new buildings of his own. When the Greeks defeated the Persians at Marathon in 490 BC, the Egyptians realized that Darius's attention was elsewhere and decided to revolt. He died before he could respond, but Xerxes quickly crushed the rebellion and installed his brother Ahmose as satrap. Xerxes ended the privileged status that Egypt held under Darius and increased supply requirements from the country, probably to fund his invasion of Greece. Furthermore, Xerxes promoted the Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda at the expense of traditional Egyptian deities and permanently stopped the funding of Egyptian monuments. Xerxes was murdered in 465 BC. 5 years later, another Egyptian rebellion occurred by princes Honorius II of Heliopolis and Amyrtaeus of Sais, subsequently assisted by the Athenians of Greece. They defeated the Persian army led by Ahmose, who was killed in the process and took Memphis while exerting control over large parts of Egypt. Xerxes' successor, Artaxerxes I, responded with a large force, defeated the Egyptians, and executed Honorius II in 454 BC. Peace ensued for the next 30 years, and the reign of Artaxerxes I left little mark on Egypt. Artaxerxes I died in 424 BC and was succeeded by Xerxes II, who only ruled for 45 days. He was murdered by his brother Sagadanus, who was consequently murdered by his brother Ochus, who became Darius II. The 28th and 29th Dynasties. In 405 BC, during the reign of Darius II, Amyrtaeus came to power in Egypt and took advantage of the murderous internal family problems of the Persians and founded the 28th dynasty. With the assistance of Cretan mercenaries, he expelled the Persians from Memphis and caught the attention of Artaxerxes II, who began building an expedition to retake Egypt. The Egyptians were spared when he had to refocus his army on his brother Cyrus the Younger and abandoned the effort. Neferud I founded the 29th dynasty by defeating Amyrtaeus in open battle and later putting him to death in Memphis. He then changed the Egyptian capital to Mendes. The 29th dynasty was one of the shortest in Egyptian history, the 28th being the shortest after Neferud I killed the first and only king. Although this dynasty struggled to redeem the past and make Egypt a great power again, it never had the resources to succeed. Neferud engaged in a number of building projects in Lower Egypt, but nothing was as impressive as past pharaohs. He was succeeded by Psammetichus, about whom little is known. He was succeeded by Achaeus. Achaeus achieved what his predecessors had failed to accomplish in building projects and additions to the Temple of Amun at Karnak. He constructed the chapel for the sacred bark of Amun-Ra near the first pylon. In 385 BC, the Persians attacked Egypt but were held back after 3 years of fighting. In 381 BC, Persia decided to concentrate on Cyprus. Achaeus sent aid, money, and 50 triremes, apparently without crew though, to Evagorus I in order to contribute to his resistance against Artaxerxes II. But when Evagorus I himself came to Egypt to beg for more aid a year later, Achaeus saw no need to continue supporting him and sent him on his way with only some money. Evagorus I would surrender to the Persians soon after. King Nectanebo I and Teos I. When Achaeus died in 380 BC, his son did not succeed him. He was ousted by Nectanebo I, who founded the 30th dynasty. This would be the last native Egyptian dynasty to rule Egypt. In 374 BC, a combined force of a Greek and Persian army entered Egypt from the western side of the delta and bypassed the fortress of Pelusium. Fortunately for Nectanebo, the Persians and Greeks still did not trust each other and delayed in their march on Memphis. This gave him time to fortify his position in Memphis, while Mother Nature flooded the Nile and forced the invading army to turn back. Nectanebo I achieved much in his stable 18 years of reign. He restored dilapidated temples and began construction of the Temple of Isis on the sacred island of Philae near Aswan. This would become one of the most important religious sites in ancient Egypt. He also began the first pylon in the precinct of Amun-Ra at Karnak. Nectanebo I's success in the Nile Delta against the invading Persian armies encouraged his son and successor Teos to plan a military expedition into Palestine and Phoenicia. Taking advantage of a moment of weakness for the Persian Empire, who were dealing with riots in Asia Minor, Teos sought aid from Sparta and Athens and managed to acquire 200 triremes. However, to finance such an expedition, Teos had to impose new taxes on the people and expropriate the goods of the temples, destroying the delicate balance artfully established by his father Nectanebo. This action ensured that Teos was hated by the people. As a result, Teos' grandson was declared as King Nectanebo II. Teos fled to Susa, but was brought back to Egypt in chains and most likely executed. The last native pharaoh, Nectanebo II. The first 8 years of Nectanebo II's reign were protected from Persian aggression by that country's own dynastic problems. This gave Nectanebo II time to commission building projects at over 100 sites. The only annotated portrait of Nectanebo II is the gray wax statue featuring the image of Horus wearing the double crown. The king wears a nymph's headdress while carrying a harpesh in a small shrine. Not only is it a striking statue, it is also an icon reflecting the age-old clash between Horus and Seth, a last testament of the ancient Egyptians and their plight against the Persian Empire. By 350 BC, the new Persian ruler Artaxerxes III had sufficiently regained power and made an unsuccessful attempt to regain Egypt. Their return 7 years later would be completely devastating. Greek mercenaries fought for both Egypt and Persia, and it was with some 20,000 Greeks forming about 1/5 of his army that Nectanebo II stood at Pelusium against this latest Persian advance. The details of this battle are not specified, but what is known is that the Greek generals on the Persian side outflanked the Greeks and ended their chance of ever ruling Egypt again. This eastern delta fortress became a part of the Persian Empire, and soon Memphis would fall, along with other delta strongpoints. Nectanebo II would flee to Nubia, and Persian rule would be reestablished once more. Nectanebo II would be the last native Egyptian pharaoh. He would also be the last Egyptian to rule Egypt for 2,300 years until General Negeb in the 1952 revolution. What became of Nectanebo II is unknown. His black granite sarcophagus was discovered in Alexandria, where it had been used as a bathtub during Ptolemaic times. It was inscribed for Nectanebo II and had images and writing from the book of What is in the Underworld. Curiously, in medieval legend, Nectanebo is said to have fled to Macedonia. There he was recognized as a great Egyptian magician and attracted the attention of Olympus and the Macedonian court. His union with the queen would produce his son, Alexander the Great, who would secretly continue pharaonic rule. None of that is real, but in reality, the native Egyptians would end with Nectanebo II. This second Persian period would only last another 10 years. Artaxerxes III would be poisoned in Persia in 338 BC, and his young successor Arses would survive for only 2 years. He would be murdered by Darius III, who would lose the Persian Empire to Alexander. Our survey of the timeline of ancient Egypt closes. The continued story of Egypt belongs with the history of the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. Eventually, this ancient culture would disappear under the sands of the very desert they once ruled. But like its resurrection cult, Egypt would renew itself through the curiosity and study of those in the Napoleonic expedition. Today, Egyptology is alive and well, and with each new find, this ancient culture speaks to us a little louder. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our 27-episode journey through the ancient Egyptian timeline, join us on Patreon, where you'll gain access to the episode guides, podcast outlines, maps, charts, diagrams, and more, all available for download as a nice addition to your online library. Join us as DW World History presents Ancient Babylon, a 15-episode series that explores the history of the ancient Near East, from prehistory to the fall of the Persian Empire. Click the link below and subscribe to this great new channel. Our adventure with ancient Egypt continues in the next episode on the history of the Karnak Temple, followed by one of the greatest episodes you will ever see on the gods and goddesses of the Egyptian pantheon. As always, thank you for joining us.